Quick update on the G. So we fixed the vibration, got the flywheel back on, positioned correctly, and then we turned up the oil pressure a little bit so that it would go from it was right at low kind of, and we wanted it a little bit higher. And when we did that, we saw that there was just oil leaking pretty bad between the crankcase here and the block. So we tightened these, we tightened those nuts. Still didn't fix the oil leak. So my dad put a new base gasket on there.
This is an old 1950 John Deere G, and it had a problem of a leaky gasket between the block and the crankcase. It was leaking pretty bad, and the gasket here, as you can see, was pretty well crystallized, just like a piece of steel. And so I figured I've got to replace this thing, and I didn't want to take the head off if I could escape it, and I didn't need to actually. So I just took the bolts out here. I took the valve cover off, and I took the rocker arms. You can see the rocker arms down there. I took them off, took the bolts out underneath and all around, and then just took a floor jack and jacked it up underneath the head here, and I'll be darned, it just slid right out. I have pictures of that. Then the question was, could I get the gasket around the rods? Because I did, and as you can see, I took the rod bearings off here in the crank and pushed them forward as far as I could, all the way up here to pretty much top dead center, both of them. And indeed, I was able to take this new gasket here and kind of gently move it around and get it in place, and put the rod bearings through it. And I just pushed it together. I have here a hydraulic ram, and that made it very handy. I just put the hydraulic ram right down in here, pushed against this right here and against here, and shoved that right in place.
We haven't started it yet, but got everything put back together. And while we were doing it, we checked the clearance on these main bearings. No, excuse me, not main bearings, these rod bearings. And we took out, I don't know how many thousandths of shim on one of them. On the number one, we took out a couple of thousandths of shim because there was 6 thousandths clearance. And so we took out a shim so that now it's just at 3 thousandths is what it's at now, 3 or 4 thousandths. Anyway, and the other rod bearing was good. So yeah, so that's all put back together. When he did that, also he adjusted the tappets here on these on the valves. One of them was really loose. There was a lot of clearance. So he tightened that up so that it now has the proper clearance. This is the water neck that goes down here on the bottom, on the bottom right here. And when my dad took that apart, then it cracked. That little ear had cracked off, and it had already been repaired on this other side. So he raised that back together as best he could. Now it's nice and flat across that whole gasket sealing surface. And now we can put this back on, refill the radiator, and start it back up and get it running again. So that's another update on the G. Just kind of fixing things here and there, but I think at this point we've got good oil pressure, we fixed the oil leaks, we fixed the vibration. The clutch still makes a little bit of chatter, and I'm not sure exactly why. I think it's one of these discs, one of those floating clutch discs in there, just kind of rattles back and forth and makes a little bit of sound, but you know, right when you're transitioning the clutch from engaged to engaged. Anyway, but yeah, should be back up and running just in time for plow day, and maybe we'll take this out and plow a little bit with it this spring.